Welcome, welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. And boy, do I have a show for you today. I know I say that every time, but sometimes I really mean it. And this is one of those times I really mean it. I have been on Penny's Zenker's podcast, and I was so excited to have her on my podcast. So please welcome with me my dear friend, Penny Zenker. Welcome to the podcast, Penny.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here as well.
Well, we have lots to talk about with Penny today. And one of the great things about Penny is that she has written a book so that you have a book that you can click on in after the show. There's all those links. You can actually find her book. And we're airing this show just before New Year's Eve. Now, most of the time we do this and we try and make them very evergreen. But since this is first being released here, I want you to know that if this is the year that you have thought to yourself, okay, I'm done with the New Year's Eve resolutions, and thank heavens we should all be done with those. But what if this is the year you want to say, however, I don't want to make a New Year's Eve resolution, but I want to reset my mindset. Guess what the title of her book is? Reset Your Mindset. Wow! Penny, let's start with, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know when I read through your bio, it called you a Focusologist.
That's right.
Okay, so let's start there. Tell me
How many Focusologist do you know?
None. You're just one.
Oh, that's super cool. Well, I'm on a movement to help us all be Focusologists. So it's just me, I created it myself, this funny word, but I created it because, we are in a focus crisis, right? There's no doubt, right? Yeah. We now have less attention span than the goldfish. I don't know who did that research, but supposedly that's the case.
That's right. They can stand and look at something for a long time, whereas we just it's definitely this. This has played this huge piece in our lives now. That we just want information, pictures, photos, coming at us nonstop.
But it's not only that, it is that, and that has sort of caused it, but we worry so much more, right? Because there's so much available to us, right? Then there's more anxiety. Look at the anxiety rate that's risen and the well-being issues that we have with our mental health. And that is because we're being bombarded with also a lot of emotional challenges and issues to deal with, right? We didn't have to worry about knowing where everyone is at every time to go, oh, I'm not being included, right? So
that's
it brings up a whole host of other insecurities, anxieties, and also deep empathy, right? Of what's going on around the world that we don't have control over, that we can't support or help fix in any way. So I think it's all of that. And what has happened is we're addicted to distraction. I say in my book, it's like sugar, right? The more you have it, the more you want to have it. And so the more we distract ourselves with things, the more we, run to the refrigerator, even though we're not hungry, or, we know those distractions and the things that we do. So it becomes habitual, right? That we're distracting ourselves because we've gotten in the habit of distracting ourselves.
I have never even thought about that. That's a great phrase, addicted to distraction.
Yeah.
And so we obviously find value in that. So what is the value that we see in being distracted? Because when you just say it like that, it sounds like, well, I don't want to be distracted.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to be addicted to anything, right? They don't set out to do that. But like you said, it serves them in some way. So if you're trying to avoid something that's difficult, then you can distract yourselves, right? Doing drugs or drinking alcohol and all of those types of things are also distractions. So just as much as getting on your phone or, binge watching a show instead of doing the report you're supposed to do, or,
okay.
Whatever. So
I just had a personal experience with that. I have never watched a series on TV. I just thought that was a complete waste of time to get addicted to a series.
Well, good for you.
Never have done it. Yeah, never have done it. And the other day, my husband, we were looking through some of the Netflix things. He goes, "Oh, look, this looks kind of good." And I go, "It's a series," and we always just go right by it. And but then we watched the trailer, and I thought, okay, maybe let's just see what we think about the first episode. We binged watched for 1 week every night and more episodes.
Right? Sucks
And
you in because they
and
ended on the cliff, like the hanger where you're like, oh, I
there
gotta
was
know
an
what happened.
explosion. Who died? This kind of stuff like, oh, what do you mean the president had a heart attack? Just kind of crazy. And when it got to the end, I found myself really angry that it was at the end because they said it's official, series 3 is coming. And I was angry but then I started really looking at that and how much of my life it took. And I was addicted to that distraction because I had so many things on my plate that week that I could have been doing.
Right.
And instead, I just allowed it. I'm not going to watch season 3. I've decided.
Okay.
I can just leave it that the president had a heart attack and we don't, and it's not real life, so I don't have to watch.
Well, here's how that mirrors and parallels everything else, right? Is when you distance yourself a little bit from it, then you can go, okay, I don't need to watch it, right? You have more control over yourself and more willpower and more ability to be more intentional. But setting those boundaries when you're getting emotionally sucked in, and it's not really our fault. I mean,
Right.
they're designed with the music and
Oh,
the storyline.
absolutely. Yeah.
Totally sucks you in. So we have to go into anything that we do in our lives with more intention, more than ever. Intention and systems to support our intention are absolutely essential. And that's sort of what the idea of being a focusologist is to control and direct your focus, meaning the energy of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions towards a positive, meaningful result. So when you say, okay, I'm going to control and direct it, that means you're going to set boundaries. And before you even get involved in these shows, like I have to say 1 episode. Because we're human, and sometimes it makes for a great relaxation escape, as long as you're taking care of your body in other ways and you're not just sitting on the sofa the whole day. But if you watched 1 episode and you set that, then you'll be okay, right? You're not going to get totally sucked in. And what some people do is they have to start it in the middle and end it in the middle so that they don't get sucked in by that.
That's a great idea. And what I discovered, Penny, was that we watched this just before we went to bed, and it was always a cliffhanger. So my nervous system was elevated, and then when you lay down, you're like, "Mom, I wonder what happened." It's a TV show.
Your mind is going everywhere. Like, oh, it could have been this or it could have been that. Who did it, right? And yeah, it's crazy.
So I've decided if we watch season 3 when it comes out, we're going to do it at the first thing we watch, and then we have time to do something at the end, like, the Great British Baking Show. And, that's just a little bit more, not like, That
won't keep you up at night learning how to make a pot pie. It won't keep me up at night.
Yeah,
like that.
No, it won't, because I'm a chef, so it won't keep me up. I know how they finished it. All right, let's talk a little bit about your book and about the reset mindset, because I think people are in this phase and they would love to have this opportunity. And you give 3 really clear steps in the process, and then we'll elaborate on those. So let's talk a little bit about your book and your why for writing the book.
Okay.
And then what the steps are.
Okay, I would love to. Well, the why comes back to the focusologist, is that we need strategies. And during the pandemic is when this really came up. I actually set out to write a different book. And I set out to write a book about the 80-20 rule and how we can live the 80-20 rule. And because it just helps us to stay focused on what matters most. And I have a story in my life that, brought that to my attention. So where I'm constantly asking myself, what's the 20% here that's going to make 80% of the difference? But what I realized is the 80-20 rule is just one of many tools that we can use to reset. To the 3 steps you were talking about is to step back, to get perspective, and to realign. And so it could be a question that we ask ourselves that helps us to step back and detach emotionally, like we were talking about in the show, right? Detaching a little bit so that you're not like, gotta
Oh
have it.
no. Yeah.
But that goes for all of our emotions, right? When our emotion is high, our intellect is low. So for us to take back control, we have to reduce the intensity of some of those feelings so that we can get perspective. Maybe we're over judging that it's much worse or much better than it actually is. So let's step back away from it. Let's get some perspective and look at some different options and what's really going on here, and then realign around what matters. And there's so many different types of strategies that we can use that I realized what I do is this 3-step process. That's how I coach people when we're
Sure.
talking about when they get stuck or they're looking to reach an impossibly big goal. It's always around, okay, well, let's step back and look at it. Maybe it's not as complex as it seems, right? Has anyone done this before, right? So we sort of break it down into these 3 steps, but they have to be accessible at any time when you might need them, especially when emotions are high. So in my head, it was kind of like, I don't want to give my age away. I don't think that they do this anymore and talk about this, but when there's a fire, what do, Mary?
Yeah. You scream fire.
Yeah, or you stop, drop, and roll. I don't know. There
Oh
were a
yeah,
whole
that
series of
sure.
commercials, or I don't remember how that was like embedded into stop, drop, and roll, right? And
Yeah.
scream fire. But so it was kind of like that. It should be something that rolls off people's tongue, that is intuitive. And I found that we do this intuitively. These 3 steps we'll do intuitively when we take what I call a reset moment. You mentioned earlier, right? We all need a reset. That word in itself, it triggers it
Mm.
because because of its meaning, and it's one of those universal words that people that's inviting. It feels good. It releases, right?
Yes.
And so it intuitively allows us, when we're going to reset, it intuitively helps us to step back away from the problem or the challenge or the thing, the discussion that went wrong or whatever it is, and then get some perspective,
Yeah.
just from that little bit of distance, and then see, well, what's our best next step here? That's what a reset is take what we learned from the past, but don't get stuck in it, and start fresh with that knowledge so that we can make better choices going forward. So when we do this over and over again, that's how we build a reset mindset. It becomes intuitive way that we live our lives, and it is so freeing for us emotionally.
Yes. Even just saying, I think you're right, just saying that word, okay, let me reset. I
Right?
was instantly aware of how many times I do that in a day even. And
Right. It was
first
unconscious
first
before, right?
it's a breath in, and then it's the breath out.
That's right.
And that is how I reset. You just get a moment to stop, drop the emotion,
Hmm.
and then roll into the next thing. You're absolutely
Exactly. Exactly, right? So,
yeah.
and we have these practices that we do or we've done in the past, and sometimes like when the pandemic uh entered into our world, like I had a lot of great practices, but it was weird because some of the things that really worked for me, I dropped. I stopped doing them. I don't know why. And they were
Ah,
useful. So it's like it becomes a reminder, well, what works for me, and what used to work but's not working now,
yeah.
right? So it just gives us that space. I call it the purposeful pause, something that we do in our everyday sometimes that we don't even realize we're doing it. And when we can recognize it, then we'll do it more often, right? We're more purposeful about it. And so that,
Sure.
that reset is that purposeful pause, but it's structured. It can be something that we do that's part of our process. So like a check-in of sorts, or it can be something that we do when situational, like a timeout. So when we see that something's getting emotional or someone's getting upset or we're not getting the result we want or we feel tired and exhausted or a lack of creativity, whatever it is, right? All of those can call for that reset moment to find what we need in the moment.
I have learned that about me. I'm with the tired one. I can be going 90 miles an hour. I have a ton of energy. I get a lot done in a day. Always have.
I
Even
can't
now,
imagine.
yeah, yeah. Even now, retired, I still go like this. And people say, like, how do you get done what you do? But I'm very much aware that if I have a moment that is like, oh, I'm exhausted. I need to take a nap. That is my body telling me you need a reset.
Yeah.
Whatever is pulling on you emotionally is causing a physical reaction. And I use that to think, okay, what was this? And what was that about? So I can reset and go again. Yeah.
Exactly. So you've kind of trained your mind over time to recognize those signals, whether it's a physical, recognition or
Yeah.
an emotional recognition, right? And then you ask a question or you slow down, you take a pause. And that's what we need to train ourselves to do. Those are signals. Like it doesn't mean push through. I'm exhausted. Okay, let's just push through. It might mean
More
it's time to
5 hour
go.
energy.
Right. I don't think so. It's probably a good time maybe to take a walk or to go
Yeah.
outside. Also to mix around what you're doing. Sometimes it requires just a change in environment. Like love picking up my laptop when I'm tired and bringing it in the other room and it's sunnier in there and all of a sudden I have a different perspective on things. And
Yeah.
either I can keep doing what I'm doing there or I just close the lid and go for a walk or, do something else.
So, what are some of the other things that people experience when they are needing a reset so that they can recognize, oh, this is one of those things Penny was talking about. I probably need a reset. What would some of those things look like? I know for me, it's I'm all of a sudden exhausted, but what would some look like?
Well, it could be you're frustrated,
Ah,
right? It could just be a simple frustration. Usually, a frustration means that your expectations aren't meeting the circumstance, right? Or so there's something that's a great time to step back and to get some perspective. What's
yeah,
happening here? What am I frustrated about? Is this important? Like, does it deserve this amount of energy? I don't know, right? The question that you might ask might be different based on what the circumstance is. But when that frustration comes up, or maybe it's sadness, or maybe it's right, all of our emotions are there for a purpose. And I
right.
was just reading a post that someone did on LinkedIn that talked about bad emotions. That there are no bad
Yeah,
emotions or
yeah.
good emotions. They're just all
They just
emotions,
are. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? And maybe some we like more than others. But they're all signals, even good emotions, like signals that I like this. This is good. This brings me joy. This makes me happy. So recognize that. How can you feed that more and do more of that? And when something is making you sad, understanding it, calling it
yeah.
sad, naming your emotions and understanding where it's coming from so that you can learn from it. I'm a firm believer that when we learn from emotional circumstances and situations, that the emotion that's attached to that circumstance or situation will actually be released. And of course,
Ah,
you can't change the what happened, but you can detach it from feeling extremely angry or ashamed or right or any of those things. You can say, well, I learned from this, and so this is what happened, but this is what I learned, and this is how I do things now, or whatever.
mm,
So that's a value, right? So that we
yeah.
recognize those as signals.
Yeah, I really like that. That if we can tune into what those signals are. For me, it's very easy for me to tune into my physical signals. My body lets me know like right away. Oh, my tummy hurts.
Hmm.
Why is my tummy hurting? I have a headache. Or on my back. And
Right.
so any of those things can be an opportunity for me to reset, to take that breath and just look at. And really, I only need now. I'm pretty good at this, about 10 seconds to say, oh, okay. Yeah,
Hmm.
I've been thinking all day about this phone call that I have to make. And to the point now that I feel nauseous and I'm an upset stomach and I think I
Hmm.
need Tums as opposed to like, why don't I just make the phone call now and then that upset stomach will go away and I don't need Tums at all. So let's
Right.
just do it now.
Yeah.
And then do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, right? See it as for investigate, right? That's the process is to recognize it, and like you said, 10 seconds. As soon as it comes
Yeah.
up, you're like, okay, what's going on here? And so it's a way for us to tap into our intuition, to our emotional intelligence, and just make things easier for ourselves. I mean, hello,
Yeah.
does anyone want to make things easier for ourselves, or should we continue to make it more difficult, right? Like now you have a stomach ache and you've got something that you don't want to do. Now it's piling up, right?
I think that's absolutely right. But sometimes, Penny, sometimes we do want to make it more difficult for ourselves. Sometimes we have this mindset of that life is meant to be hard and it's supposed to be difficult for me. To people who are kind of stuck in that life is hard and they wake up thinking that every morning, another day, another shit show, blah, blah,
Right.
for people, or they go to bed thinking that, I'm glad that day's over. I
Right.
guess so those people who think that life is just meant to be hard, how do you address them?
So there's a couple different reset practices that they could use. Like first thing I might ask them is, can you remember a time when life was easy?
Ah,
So maybe it's just been a while and they're just not connected to it. So what was present when life was easy? Let's just kind of, go back to a time when you felt easy, and then at least bring ease into the body so that then they feel and appreciate. So that's one way, right? Is we can remember a time when we did feel that, or could we imagine what it would feel like right now to
if life
feel
were
like things
easy.
are easy? What if things were just easy?
Yeah.
And what would need to happen in your life to make things easier? So sometimes it's just we're not doing the exploration because we're emotional, right? And so if we meet with that emotion and just put it aside for a second, like what if we just took that complexity and that hardness and we wrapped it up in a ball and we put it in a box just for a moment, right? So anyway, that's maybe my neurolinguistic programming side coming out. But simple questions
Yeah.
can help us to step into a different place, to future pace what it would look like in the future when we achieve this thing that we're looking to do. But it could also be as simple as something in the most difficult time of my life, without going into it, sort of everything, many things were falling apart at once, because that's sometimes what happens. And I started a gratitude journal. So I had somebody, a friend of mine said, oh, you should write down everything that's going wrong in your life. Write it down in your journal. And I thought, ew, that sounds,
I don't
that
think I
sounds
would
like it's
like
just going to
that. Yeah.
depress me more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what people don't realize, and I'm not against journaling, but I think if we talk about something over and over again, that's all the negativity and all that's wrong and everybody that did me wrong, and if I were to write that down, I'd be full of that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to push it down or push it away, but I decided, because both are present at the same time, I decided to do the opposite. I was going to take a moment before bed and when I woke up in the morning so that I could focus on 3 things that I was grateful for. And that helped me. And some days it was hard. Like,
Yeah.
there were a lot of things that I'd rather focus on or feel bad about or want to wring somebody's neck or whatever. But I chose to do that. And then all of a sudden, the more that you look for gratitude, the more gratitude you feel and you see, right? So, whether it was the laughter of my children, right? That I could remember that moment, it's like taking little snapshots of that laughter that just makes you laugh as well. Or maybe it's, the changing colors of the trees and how beautiful it was to walk down, just my neighborhood street. We start to just notice those things that can lift us up just a little bit. And when we bring gratitude in our heart, no matter what type of, and I was literally at a very, very challenging time in my life, it helped to make things just a little easier. And so that's what I meant by the intensity is we can reduce with gratitude. I could reduce the intensity of the anger and the sadness and the all of that was there in a ball all together. And it helped. So
It, yeah,
something simple like that can make a big difference. Moving our bodies and exercising also
is a
makes a
great
big
thing. Yeah.
difference.
I love that concept of that gratitude, something that we hear all the time. You can't open social media or LinkedIn or read a book without it being involved because we hear it all the time. And
Because it works.
because it works. That is
Because
exactly
it works. Like, we're like, oh, I'm sick of hearing about. But, gratitude comes in a lot of different forms. What if gratitude was just giving out 3 compliments a day to make someone else feel good? How good does it feel when you give a compliment and somebody's like, oh, thank you? And so it can be a lot of different ways that, and it doesn't have to be in the way that somebody else sees it, but how would you feel, right? Grateful, and how could you create a practice that just helps you bring that into your heart every single day?
And this is kind of a very, I guess, personal example, but I was married to an individual for 28 years, and it was the 28 years of greatest growth in my life. That's how we're going to put that.
Right.
Because it truly was. I am who I am today because of that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And now, this is a piece you don't know about me, but I've only been married, Penny, for 8 months.
Oh, congratulations.
And that every night of ending my day, cuddled up next to John with his arm around me and my head on his shoulder, and to lay there and just experience that gratitude for being there and who he is and who we are together, who I am with him, and to fall asleep in that gratitude. I roll over once in the night. I wake up in the morning every since we've been together and just think, life is so beautiful. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for allowing yourself to be in this beautiful place. And it has literally shifted my life to now at age 71 having more energy than I had at age 50, to living life fuller than I did at age 50. And that's all because of that gratitude shift.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a difference. And like I said, we go about our day to day and we don't take these reset moments. So a reset moment might just be to bring gratitude into our heart, because we're just busy and we're taking for granted the people and the things that we have in our lives. What if we took those reset moments, those purposeful pauses for that, right? And just to, some people say grace, right? Just and sometimes it becomes something that you just do and you're not really connected to it anymore. So I think it's also important to mix it up. So after you feel like, I started to do my gratitude journal, it's been 15 years, and I stopped doing it because I was doing it, but not connecting truly to the gratitude. So I started a gratitude meditation, which was different. Or like I said, I started to give out compliments. I started to do different things because sometimes if we do the same thing over and over again, it doesn't have the same effect, right?
Yep.
So look for other ways, mix it up. I've been only married, by the way, only for 2 years myself.
Okay, so you're newlywed too.
Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
I have what my husband and I had decided we wanted to do was the wedding was just so beautiful in how we felt in our hearts and the amount of love that it and connection that it created. That we're like, we need to get married every year to renew our vows and
Yes.
and go somewhere. We got married in a destination wedding, and go somewhere that, and create that specialness. Because
I
like
love
said,
that.
our day to day. So yeah, maybe, I read that somewhere that somebody got married every single year. And I thought, that's so cool.
I love that. We got married in Ireland. And so I absolutely have thought, and we've talked about, what about for our anniversary every year, we go back to Glendalough and just walk the path and just
That's
be
cool.
there
Walk
in
the
that
path.
old feeling. And
Yes.
yeah, we're ready to do that. You said something, Penny, that really struck me, and it's going to be a personal help for me.
Oh,
You
great.
said when our emotions are high, our intellect is low. And I really wanted to repeat that because I wanted my listeners to zero in on that as much as I did. Because sometimes when I'm in the middle of high emotion, no matter what it is,
Hmm.
but typically it's high emotion with stress that this is bringing me to. And my natural thought process is to let's just push through this. Let's work this out. That's, we're not going to stop until we understand. And maybe at those moments when my emotion is so high, my my frontal lobe of my brain has shut down.
Hmm.
My brainstem is driving the fight or flight, and I'm there to fight. I'll tell you, it's not
Yeah.
about flight. And what if I take that moment because my intellect has shut down
Right.
and just reset? And I know how to do the reset. I know how to breathe, and I know how to recognize it. But what when it's with another person? And then what will happen to the outcome?
Hmm.
To allow those emotions to settle down and my intellect to come back into play.
Right.
That's going to change my life.
That's awesome. Well,
I
it's
love
it's
that.
changed mine because it's helped me to have more deep and meaningful conversations and be able to have those conversations. I actually, if there was any type, I'm a very sensitive person. A lot of people might not think that or know that about me, but like, I just watched a preview of a movie and I was bawling
I
and
love
with my
that.
mom and my cousin, and they're like, "What is up with you?" And I'm like, "It just it touched my heart, and I
Yeah.
can't like."
Yeah.
So I used to, any type of really intimate conversation would bring me to tears, and I'd have a difficult time having that conversation. And so it was really important to me to be able to manage my emotions in such a way so that I could have the conversations, that I could, not be in fight or flight or tear or fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And be in a place where I could have that conversation. And maybe it took a minute, or I needed to just ask permission to just give me a moment. Um, and whatever you need to think about or do, it's good to step away sometimes from a conversation. I have a family member who will fight to be right, no matter the cost, and has sometimes, there's things that you can say in the short term that will have a negative long term impact. So sometimes it's better to see the bubble, right? And that's why these reset moments, at first you're going to recognize it after it happens, go, I shouldn't have said that. Then you're going to recognize it in the moment, like, I'm sorry I said that. I mean, or I apologize. Whatever. You're able to correct it in the moment. And the more that you do it and you become that this is part of who you are, you're going to recognize the bubble that shows up in your head, that thought, and you're going to say, that's not going to help me here. That's not going to help the situation. And so I'm
Yeah.
going to find something that would be more productive. You can feel it and you can recognize that you feel it, but you go, that's not going to help.
Yeah. I still need to be right. I
That's
love
that's
that.
probably one of the greatest growth is through my first divorce, and maybe it was sooner than that. I'll have to think about that. Is I let go of needing to be right, and that has
Yeah.
changed my life.
It actually changed John and I's lives. Just actually fairly recently, we were making the bed, and he makes his side. We pull up the covers together, and I had a way I wanted the bedspread. And he goes, "Okay, I got it, I got it, I got it." I said, "No, you don't know how I want the bedspread. Let me show you." He goes, "No, I've got it, I've got it, I've got it." And he just kept moving forward. And finally, I said, "John, you don't know what I want, and you're not listening to me." And I just walked out of the room. I was like, "I need a reset." I was only gone for 2 seconds. I turned around and came back, and I said, "Sometimes I feel this way, like you're not listening to me. I just want to be heard."
Hmm.
And he goes, and then he said it. He goes, "I just want to be right." And
There you
my
go.
jaw dropped. And he said, I wanted to be right in how we made the bed. And I'm like, wow. And we were able to sit at that moment and
Right.
talk about, so with me, you still feel you have a need to be right. Tell me about that. Tell me what that feels like, what that looks like, what that brings up in you. And we were able to process through that. And he was able to say to me, okay, so you have a pattern of feeling like you're not heard. He goes, I don't know how that happens in you because I feel like everyone hears you, but okay, I get it. And it was magnificent to take that reset moment
Yeah.
and then let the emotions come down, and we were able to use our intellect. Wow. I love
Yeah.
that.
That's
And
powerful. And for it's funny when you mentioned the bedspread, so I went right to the toilet paper. So my husband likes, and it's important that the toilet paper comes from the
from the
top
top.
and not from the bottom. And to be honest, I don't care.
I don't
Like,
care.
and you know what? So I'm just like, of course, I'll do it the way that you want because it doesn't matter to me. That's not something I need to fight to be right, right? And so, and
Yeah.
I think also having kids and constantly having the different battles that you have with your children really makes you
Yeah.
appreciate choosing your battles.
Pick your battles. Absolutely.
So I
Absolutely.
get very clear which battles I am don't want to fight,
And
and that's totally fine.
that doesn't change because when they grow up and go out and have their own children, you pick your battles of what you want to say. It's important to me to have you here for this occasion. And you can't say that every week. You have to
Right?
say,
Yeah.
yeah, pick what week is important to you.
Yeah.
In closing, Penny, I just want to talk for a second. I want to encourage my listeners to listen to your TED Talk, which is on YouTube. Uh, you talk about the Matrix. There's so many great stories in there, but you talked about the Matrix and the moment that Neil realizes that he could be the one, and then moving to knowing that he is the one. And I sat into that moment for just a second and thought, what is that like to know that I am the one? And not the one to save mankind. Neil had a bigger mission than I have, but that I am the one to do my particular vision and my mission. I am the one. I am the only one to do my piece.
Hmm.
So, how do you encourage or get people to understand that piece that you truly are the one? And what does that give them the permission to do?
Wow. Well, exactly, what you said is when you feel like you own so in the beginning, I talked about Neo not feeling like he was the one. Like, look, I
Right.
wasn't fast enough, right? So
Yeah.
very often we deny
Yeah.
some of our superpowers. We put them down. Oh, it's not a big deal. Everybody else is like, does this too or whatever, and they don't. We are each unique. Each one of us has a different background, upbringing, culture, which makes us like a unique snowflake. Not any one of us is the same, and every single one of us has something. And I don't care what the circumstance is. Every one of us has something that we can give to others. So knowledge or an experience or whatever it is to enhance each other's lives, right? To make this world a better place.
Right.
And we have to be open to understanding that. And others need to be open also to each other to receive that. So,
Yes.
I think that we have a responsibility both on both sides. And really, so I shared it in my TEDx was about the energy of thought, that it starts
Yes.
there. It
Yeah.
starts there. It starts with what we allow ourselves. We are meaning makers. And so we have to look at I believe that every single moment of our lives, we're asking this question, what does this mean? Right? Things are happening around us And in order for us to process it unconsciously, we say, what does this mean? And so we give it a meaning, and so we're unconscious of that. So if we make that process a little more conscious, especially for those bigger things, and say, what meaning am I giving this? And know that you are in control. Well, what if it doesn't mean that? What if it doesn't mean that you're stupid, or, like I thought I was not smart growing up? What if my parents saying you can take the test again and, comparing me to my brothers, what if that didn't mean you're stupid? What if it means we believe in you and there's an opportunity for you to learn and grow? So, but I shut it down. And I think that I learned how to open it up and to challenge the meaning. And so what else could this mean? And what else could it mean? And then I became what one of my mentors, Steve Linder, he calls a choiceologist. So maybe that's where the focusologist came from, because we all have control of those choices that we make.
Yeah.
And meaning is one of them. So that's how I bring people to understand that they're the one, is first start with what you own, and own your superpowers.
Own your superpowers. Reset. Listen to your TED Talk. You have so much to offer all of my listeners, and I really hope that all my listeners jump on to following you and reading about you. I loved being on your podcast. Penny has a podcast. We're going to include that link too, so you can follow Penny on her podcast as well. And thank you for bringing this to me today. I always feel like I walk away with something. But with you, Penny, I've walked away with a huge peace. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing, the brilliant woman that you are. I mean, when I was reading that this is a woman who started off thinking that you weren't smart. And yet by age 31, you had founded, built, and sold your own multi-million-dollar company by age 31, and on to do so much more. You're an incredible woman, and I'm so grateful to have you cross paths with me. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Crafting a meaningful life.